Week in Louisiana politics. Well, earlier this week, we saw the U.S. Senate finally pass the continuing resolution that would reopen the U.S. government. A member of that chamber joins us now. He is U.S. Senator Bill Cassidy, Republican from Louisiana. Senator, thanks for coming on.
Hey, Fred, good to be with you. Good to be in Louisiana, but good to be with you.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. So we know that a lot of things are going to happen now that the government will reopen. We know that the SNAP benefits will flow again. We know that federal workers will begin to get their paychecks again. But I wanted to drill down on the National Flood Insurance Program. This is near and dear to people in Louisiana. Will that be restored, and what's the impact of that having lapsed?
Yeah, so that was one of the casualties of the shutdown. Let's assume that you got to get a mortgage and you have to have proof that you have a flood insurance program. You were not able to get that proof for 6 weeks. If you needed to renew your policy, you couldn't renew your policy. So a lot of potential consequences. And you think about that young couple, they've been renting. They finally stopped paying their rent. They were going to go get their new home, and now they can't get the new home because they can't get the flood insurance proof. So this is restarted. The National Flood Insurance Program will be operative. Now, in the meantime, we also have to reform it. We got to make it so it's more affordable. But first step, get it reopened, and second step is to make it more affordable. We're working on that second step right now.
I know in the Senate you voted, more than a dozen times to reopen the government, but you guys had to strike a deal with the Democrats in order to get some of those moderate Democrats over to your side. Was it that Republicans would guarantee a vote on extending those ACA subsidies?
Yeah, and the crazy thing is, John Thune, our majority leader, had said 4 weeks ago that he would give them that vote. One role I had was going to folks who eventually voted to reopen the government and say, wait, you want to vote? John Thune says he would give you a vote. No, he didn't. Yeah, he did. Go look at it. He said it from the floor of the Senate. He said it on MSNBC. He was quoted. And so it was a little bit like marriage counseling where people were talking past each other and you had to get them to actually listen to what the other was saying. And that certainly played, at least that contributed somewhat to getting people in a position where they could reopen the government.
Listening to each other, that's a novel concept, right? So, so we keep hearing from that side of the aisle that Republicans don't like extending the ACA subsidies. First of all, is that true? And if it is, why?
Well, first, when you just do a straight up extension and do nothing else, you're just papering over a really broken system. The Affordable Care Act has become the Unaffordable Care Act. And if we give $26 billion to the insurance companies in 2026, 20% of that money is going to go to profit and overhead, and only 80% to actually paying for health care. What Republicans are suggesting, this Republican, and President Trump has endorsed my idea, is that we take that money instead and we give it to the patient directly. Allow her to use the money as she sees fit for her deductible. Right now, an Obamacare policy may have a $5,000 deductible. Sure, I've got a policy, but I can't pay the deductible. I don't have the money. This would give you the money to pay for that deductible, number one. Number two, if you had that account, whether it's a flexible savings account or something else, you could pay for things that insurance typically doesn't pay for. Dental work, orthodontics for your child, eyeglasses. So things that the insurance doesn't pay for, you can make the decision to pay for. Lastly, it may be that if you pay cash, you get a better deal. And so now that someone's spending money in her own account, she's going to stretch that out as far as she can. And so she may end up finding a better deal shopping around. We think that's a better solution than giving $26 billion to the insurance company and they take 20% of it for profit and overhead.
So as a doctor, I know you probably have something to say about this accusation from the Democrats. They say, speaking of not listening to each other, that the Republicans have been ignoring their offers to protect public health care access.
I don't quite know what they mean by that. I just don't. Because believe me, I am actively reaching out to everybody, Republican and Democrat. What are your ideas? How can we work together? We need to be first Americans and secondly a member of a party if we're going to solve things like high healthcare cost. And the president's motto is make America healthy again. And so I've worked with he and Secretary Kennedy on an agenda to do that. Shouldn't be partisan. It should be something we all work together for. And so because it should be about the American people first and about a political consideration second. I'm not sure where they're coming from on that. This guy's willing to listen to him.
Good to know. Well, Tim Kaine, he's a Democrat from Virginia. I think he was able to attach some language to the bill that he says would stave off any reductions in force measures by President Trump. As we know, when this started happening, President Trump and others were talking about possibly even laying off some federal workers. This would keep that from happening. Are you okay with that language?
I am. And because one, if you're going to reorganize, you can downsize the federal government, but it shouldn't be, oh, let's just kick off 3,000 people. It should be, these are the people we don't need, and these are the people we do need. And if the people we don't need are doing this, we need the people that we're keeping to do it now. You need to have a thought process because otherwise, you're going to hear the complaints like I've been hearing that people are calling the Social Security Administration and the call's not being answered. Well, we probably need somebody there to answer a phone call, or the people in the VA who have found some gaps in their services. I'm all about being financially responsible, and I'm just as much about making sure the federal government's responsible to the responsive to the American people. So we can get both, but you need to think it through.
Well, it's good to see good news coming out of Washington, D.C., but I'm curious how long this continuing resolution will fund the government for. Are we going to be back at it in like a month or so?
Well, it's going to go through the end of January. But in the meantime, we're hoping to pass some appropriations bills, which is to say, fund the government the way we normally fund the government. So the Agriculture Department will be funded through the latest thing we voted on. Great for farmers. It'll also pay for the SNAP benefits. So we're taking care of that. We also hope to pass the Department of Defense appropriations to pay our military. So if you put all that together, you end up with 80% of the government funded. Yeah, what we're working on it runs out at the end of January, but at that point, 80% of the government's already funded, and you're only fighting over 20%, and that's a much smaller fight.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. Senator Bill Cassidy, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks, Fred.
All right, stay with us. We'll be right back.